Hello, hello Facebook, hello the world, hello everyone. Welcome to another Lunchtime Live from Leeds by Example. Those of you who've joined some of these will know what happens here is a few people basically talk about issues of sustainability, how we can make Leeds more sustainable, particularly with a bit of a business context as well. So talking to people who are doing real things and actually making the change and making it happen. I'm Peg Alexander, general journalist, bod around town. We've got Rob Greenland from Zero Waste Leeds, Leeds by Example. Everybody knows you, Rob, anyway, don't they?
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, hello
For all the right
everybody.
reasons.
And our star guest today, Jonathan Lindh from LEDA, Leeds Environmental Design Associate. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi. Hello, everyone.
So, Jonathan, let's just start with your background, okay? Because actually, it's loads zappier. I may have a green screen of town behind me, but you've got the real deal behind you, haven't you? Go on, tell us about what's behind you.
Yeah, well, this goes back to 1993 when we bought the land that this building I'm in sits on. And we did a three-house terrace of self-build eco houses, um, luckily in Chapel Allerton. As in, yeah, we were lucky to get hold of the land, which is always the big problem with any building project. And yeah, so we set off on this journey of building ourselves these, what we came up with as being our version of, a very eco response to living. Um, so yeah, it was quite an adventure. We've nearly finished.
Jonathan, I've got to ask you a question. I've never asked you this question, but many years ago, probably about 15 years ago, I went to a party in Chapel Allerton, and I'm pretty sure it must have been your house. I remember a compost toilet,
There were,
and
yeah,
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 and I also remember a wall that could be pulled down that was full of plants, and the wall could be
yeah,
pulled
yeah.
out to water the plants. Am I in the right house?
Yeah, that's actually next door. That's
Okay.
my good friend Hamid designed and built that house. Yeah, so it had that lovely, oh, it still has the lovely feature of the famous watering system for keeping all the
Yeah.
plants going. And yeah, so they're
Literally a
all,
massive wall covered in plants, just fabulous.
yeah, it was great, or it is great, yeah. And we haven't got quite so many plants. Each house was customized by each household to be what they wanted it to be. So they've all got slightly different things, sort of nice different staircases, but they're all basically the same. They have, we all lived in Victorian houses, classic Leeds Victorian terraced house, quite big for, the footprint. And, we wanted something that was similar in size. And we kind of used the same footprint because it's very efficient. It's narrow, but it's quite long. So because it's long and you're in a terrace, you want light in the middle. So some of the Victorian houses had the skylight at the top of the stairs. So we just put each one has got a very big skylight, so it brings lots of light down the stairs. And generally, they're quite open plan, as you may remember. That house is very open
And a
plan, and
lot
ours
of
is very
wood, I
similar.
presume is sustainable wood. Really beautiful, gorgeous wood.
Yeah, wood is a very beautiful thing, and yeah, they're all built of wood mostly, and they sit on little concrete pads in the ground on this sloping site. It's very steeply sloping, and that's great if you're building in wood, which is made of wooden frames. So these are big wooden frames, and there's five or six of them for each house, and then they're kind of joined together with other bits of wood so that they all stand up and do the thing. But each house sits on posts, as it were. So there are 9 or 12 posts for each house, um, and they can you can cut them to suit the site. So it's a very nice way of making use of a site that's actually quite difficult to build on as
Wow.
well. And the other thing was that we wanted to sit lightly on the land. So this is where the other sustainability ideas come in, so that we didn't put too much concrete in the ground. And we also have a living roof on the back roofs. So we wanted to kind of replace the living things that in green that we've taken away by building. So it was a kind of quite idealistic and self-build, and we were self-sufficient in water. We had compost toilets. Some of those features, well, the compost toilets are still here in this house and the next door ones, but we also do have one of those modern flushing toilets as well. People
Those
actually relieved to hear.
modern fangled things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so,
interesting about the light, because I mean, Peg, your conversation with Situ last week. I mean, the design of their house said that similar thing, didn't it? With the big kind of, to get the light right through the building.
yeah. Yeah, those situ houses are built around some pretty interesting variations on that, really, because they are, again, quite narrow and long on a tight site. But to get that quality of light into a house is always really important. It makes them feel lovely to be in. So
I have to say,
yeah,
Jonathan, we've got some comments on Facebook already.
Okay.
So Lou Cunningham says, "Wow, sounds amazing." I don't know if that's just generally about the house or the garden wall or the compost toilet. In fact, Christine says, "Do you do an open house?"
yeah, we haven't done it for a long time. We did do open house for about 5 or 6 years after we kind of finished. To be honest, we got to the point where we were happy to kind of bring people into the house about 5 years after we started. It was a long project. We all had, well, most of us had children, and some of them wanted to be part of the project, some of them didn't. So but it was a big project, really, for all of us, and it was a long time ago now. But I think the principles of that are, they're still relevant. It's just that we do things. I wouldn't build the same house now. I build a wooden house. That's a good choice. In terms of sustainability, we're now ever more conscious about, the impacts of the materials that we use. So trying to use concrete and these kind of things and heavy masonry materials as little as possible, because there's so much embodied energy. They take so much energy to produce. So again, like the situ houses and other houses that are being built to be very energy efficient, I have to say, quite a bit more energy efficient than this house, although you might notice, I'm trying to point to it at the same time, but these are actually, we put these in 1995. They are triple glazed windows, which was quite hard to
At
get hold
that
of.
time, absolutely. So
Yeah,
talk
so
to us a bit about sort of some of the other places that you're designing through LEDA then, because obviously those kind of concepts of how can you make a home as carbon neutral as possible, you're just trying to get into everything that you do.
yeah, I think in some ways we come like a full cycle now. So, but we've learned a huge amount, everybody collectively, and there's some great projects that people have done that we can learn from. And so, we build to what now is called the Passive House standard, or we design to that standard, and hope to build to it. It is a very exacting standard, and it's relatively, we've had Passive House for about 10, 12 years in this country, possibly a bit longer, and we're still working our way as to how to make it cost efficient. I hate those words, cost efficient, but that is the reality that we work in. I mean, I hate them because the values that they represent don't represent the values that we need in order to tackle the problems that we have. So the problems we have is affordability of running your house, of reducing our impact on the planet, and the money thing says no, you can't do that because it's too expensive. But the money thing could mean doodly squat if the planet's dying and it's costing us so much to fix the planet, in inverted commas, because of environmental disasters, blah, blah, blah. So, you could go on to that. But we are starting to get to grips with all this, and it's really exciting in a way. And I'm working on some great housing projects at the moment that I'm really happy and really enjoy being part of. Everything from a one-off passive house, timber framed. We're working with New Wortley Housing Association at the moment, doing their first housing scheme. They're a great.
Tell us, a bit more about that, because that's really interesting, and because, as you say, it's a community association that.
Yeah, well, Lou will know about that. It's in her area, and she's involved with it next door in Armley. Yeah, it's grassroots New Wortley Community Association several years ago decided that they wanted to build some houses in their area on some spare land that was there, where there'd been some cleared council housing. And yeah, so we're now just crossing fingers as I speak, about to get the planning permission for that scheme, which is going to be 15 terraced houses and 7 2-bedroom flats that we're going to try and build to the highest standards we can. And it's proving difficult to get the funding that we need to be able to do it to, say, passive house. And we'd like very much to build them in timber. But again, we've got to go through this process of cost analysis and so on and so forth, which we have done, but we'd like to push it a bit further to see how much we can really do with the budgets that we can get hold of.
What about all the government grants at the moment? Because obviously we've just heading into, aren't we? I think, does it open in September? The green sort of home improvement scheme.
Yeah, I mean, they wouldn't be, they are great in the sense that there's some money being made available to people in their own houses, currently homeowners, or possibly even they are extended to the rented sector as well. I'm not quite sure the detail of all of this because it's only just been confirmed. So we haven't been directly involved, although I'm looking at it on behalf of one of my clients at the moment. So it will definitely help people make a big contribution to their own running costs, but also the impacts arising from living in our homes and being energy efficient.
I was going to ask that question really, in terms of the balance between the kind of energy efficiency in terms of the build and then the kind of living in it as well. And I suppose that how we live in our homes must have a real kind of impact in terms of the kind of climate, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And, we're all kind of learning about our impacts more and how do we live more sustainably? We like to live comfortably. We like to live with our heating, giving us the warmth, and it's good for our health as well. It's complex issues, but, I think we're just going to have to make our houses more energy efficient. There's no two ways about it. And there has been a huge amount done, elevating properties to a standard. Local authorities, the decent home standard over the years is at least pulling things up gradually. And, we need to build on that. And also homeowners, if we're thinking about doing any house improvements, we should really be thinking about how could we improve the energy, how can I reduce my energy bills at the same time as doing that? And obviously we talked to a few people who are doing that.
Well, as you say, the rental sector is really important as well, isn't it? The stuff I've read suggests that a lot of, less well insulated homes tend to be rented homes. Is that right? And kind of at the lower end of the market.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say not all of them. I mean, obviously there are some rented sector stuff that's decent and good and run by people, but there's a lot of people running these places perhaps purely for profit or just to make a living, but it's not the best and most efficient way of keeping our housing stock up.
And of course, a lot of rented properties, people in there who the least able to afford high energy bills as well.
Well,
so,
no, exactly. Yeah.
We're right into the kind of quagmire of legacies of various housing policies over the years, not building enough affordable homes, socially affordable, social housing, right to buy, the home ownership becoming the thing that we all needed to do to be fulfilled people, and it's just not really worked. Or so equally there's been sporadic money coming in to raise the standard of our insulation and so on, and the performance of our housing and buildings, but it's not very joined up and it's been a bit patchy over the years. And now we've got kind of perfect storm where we really need to get to grips with this issue of reducing our energy, at the same time that we've inherited a housing stock that it's not very efficient. And we know this, and it's and people will know this from living in the houses they live. But we really need to do something quite radical about it. Well, the Green Homes Grant is a start, but we really need. I think there was somebody you'll know. I was at an event where Paul Chatterton was attending, and the phrase "we need an army of retrofitters" to really start getting to grips with this. And I think that's right. We really have to be able to do this at scale, but do it with the quality that we need, because we don't want to make. You get kind of one opportunity to do this every so often. And you want to make sure that you do it well.
Talk to us about that retrofitting thing. So that idea that those of us who, well, I say those of us who own their own homes, I live in a rented flat, but those who do own their own homes, actually, because I do own a home as well. But anyway, that's a whole other story. But yeah, so how we go about making our homes much better. What can we do? How easy is it? Well, we don't have that army of retrofitters, and while we don't have necessarily national policies to.
Yeah, it's difficult, because it does demand some capital at some point that you're really going to need. But there are lots of simple stuff, and when we did some work with Leeds to create homes, about 8 years ago, we created a low carbon guide to retrofitting, based around the kind of work on the houses that they were dealing with. And one of the things that we looked at is what makes the most impact in terms of cost per quantity of carbon saved, and really changing behavior is one of the most effective ways, cheapest, because it's kind of for free. We just need to be able to exchange the information about, if I really do remember to turn the lights off, if I do control my heating so that it only comes on when I really need it. And some of these things might not be, you might not be able to do it, but actually fitting a heating control is generally a lot cheaper than renewing a whole central heating. And sometimes it's that sort of thing of, targeting, and I don't, there are still the big things that need to be done. And but if we're making,
when you're talking about those big things, because we got a couple of questions on Facebook, someone saying, what do you suggest for me living in a back-to-back? That's Lou. Or Christine says they're living in the 1970s box. What are some of those bigger things that we can do?
Yeah, you've got to do it carefully. I mean, I think what we like to do is we like to work with the whole house being considered. So just bear that in mind as a thing. So, I'll say, I can immediately start talking about, we live in very leaky buildings. So making our buildings a little bit more airtight and not having so many drafts coming through is a really important part of saving energy and making ourselves more comfortable. And that can be done to a certain extent by yourself, or working with people like Andy Walker, who might have heard of, who set up again, we work with Andy on the retrofit guide for Latch, but this thing about DIY improvements, and Andy's done a lot of work with people on their homes of retrofitting, air tightness, but also you've got to be careful that you take out the moisture, which is the thing that does need to come out of your house. So in your toilets, to your bathrooms and your kitchens, you need to get the moisture out. So you need these vent fans, which sometimes people think, oh, well, they're taking all the air out and that's all the heat going out. But actually, they're just doing a little job of taking in the right amount of air out that will get rid of all the moisture. So it's just, it's looking at things like draft proofing is a really good place to start. Okay, some people might have already done that. So where do I go next? Well, the heating controls, the use of lighting, making sure that you've got all your LED lights, making sure that if you can insulate places easily, if you still have got a loft or an attic that has only got maybe 4 inches or 100 mil of insulation in, you know, it would be great if you could put in 400 mil of insulation, if you can get in there to do that. With loose back to back, it's quite hard because there's not a lot of roof space in those, but there are areas, and also you've got to be careful. And this is why, you know, there's a lot of advice around about this, but if you look into it, Andy Walker's got various things on websites, but also the energy
we'll
savings.
share links to this, you know, below the
Yeah. And
Mm.
Energy Savings Trust has got things about, you know, doing things yourself or getting other people to do it. Now, hopefully, you know, if you can afford to put in or get hold of this £5,000 grant, you know, you could do a lot of kind of basic stuff, upping the insulation in your roof, getting it a bit more airtight, but making sure that the air is moving in the places that it really needs to be moving. So in your roofs, you still need that air moving through to make sure that moisture gets out, because moisture is kind of the enemy for all sorts of reasons. You know, the way it attacks materials, the way that it affects our health. You know, if our houses are too moist, this is a really kind of, you know, pandemic style thing. You know, it's much easier for the virus to travel in moist air than it is in dry air. I mean, it's just one aspect, but
and let's face it, living up here, we all know about damp conditions and what that can do if people are living. You know, if you've got any bits of damp and moisture. You know, I was quite taken, Jonathan, by that thing you said. That it's quite a small thing to do about, you know, heating controls. Because one of the things I'm aware of, because I'll be honest, right, I'm not good with cold. But I'm a woman of a certain age. It's heating me up at the moment, which is probably quite good for the planet. But leaving that aside, one of the things the positive things for me for the pandemic is I don't set my heating. I've forgotten how to use my timer switch on my heating because I'm in all the time. So I literally just switch it on when I wake up. You know, I do my meditation, and then before I get in the shower, the heating's on by the time I get in the shower, and then I've got it here, and I'm kind of turning off and on as I need it, and that's makes me realize how much energy I'm saving by not having things set, because when we're going out to work or whatever, you kind of set it at certain times.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's quite an interesting point in terms of one of the things that we did at home a few years ago, and there's still plenty that we'd need to do. But the point about kind of measuring your energy use, you know, we got one of those things where you can measure your electricity use, and we went around turning things on and off and all that kind of stuff, and then also kind of switch into LED light bulbs, you know. And again, that's a relatively simple thing for most of us to do, and that made a massive kind of difference. And I think I think that point you're making about, you know, look, don't discount some of the small changes you can make, but also don't discount some of the behavioral changes you can make. I mean, sometimes we focus on thinking, oh, well, if only I could do that solid wall insulation on the whole house, and that might be really useful. But actually, start with some of the basics that you might be able to do yourself, or with a bit of help from somebody, you know, and they can make a difference.
And don't let it kind of, you know, the big problem get in the way of, like, you just need to make those small steps as well. You know, that's
over time.
Part of it.
Yeah.
We've gone a long way since I remember as a young'un in my first rented flat, which is on the Otley Road. It's now sort of luxury place, but I'll tell you what, it was far from luxury when me and my then partner David lived in it. And you know, do you remember putting the cling film over the windows with a hairdryer?
Hairdryer.
To try and sort of stretch it and put it. You know, we've come a long way from that, thank goodness. But
we're talking about ice on the inside of windows.
Oh yeah, God, every morning, yeah.
Those
were the days, eh?
Yeah, there'll be some, you know, there's still a lot of single glazed houses around.
Well, actually, Dawn does ask a question on Facebook. She says, are there any grants or funding or help for new windows for tenants living in rented property? I mean, I'm not sure, Dawn, but it might well be that this new, if it's a single glaze, this new grant that's out at the moment, might be worth talking to your landlord about whether they can get double or triple glazing put in with this new grant.
We'll share a link to that below this. I mean, I think from what I've seen, I think landlords can access the grant for their properties. So it could be worth a chat, and I think you can. you can go from single glazing to double. You can't
Yeah.
replace your existing double glazing, but
Yeah.
from what I've seen. But we'll share the links to it below
Yeah.
this.
Lou says of a laughter that really useful tips. Thank you. Plenty of drafts to go out, she says.
Yeah. We've all
As
got them. I've got
we've
them in
all,
here.
even in your swanky wood.
Yeah, well, yeah, we did our best, but it was, I'm always got an eye for improvement, and yeah, timber moves over time, so you do need to. I think that's the thing. The other thing about it is that we have a little bit of that concept that you buy this house, and it's like, and then you've got it, and then it'll just be the house. It'll just carry on being the same. We forget, like, if we buy a car, we get a mechanic to do something regularly on our car, well, if we're sensible or if we can afford it, because otherwise it breaks down. And houses are exactly the same. And also the way that we use our houses, and things wear out, things need to change. And a little bit about experimenting with things. I'll try and, you were saying, Rob, about tracking what happens if look, here's a little gadget that tells me how much energy I'm using. Maybe if I just turn off all these lights every day, that'll make a difference. And then you can kind of, oh yeah, that actually did make a difference. Or maybe it didn't, but that other thing that I did, which I didn't think was really worth doing, actually that did help. So we've got to there aren't a lot of instant returns on this path, but gradually you get there. I mean, some of them are, the good ones are the ones that make you feel more comfortable, because of course that's the instant hit, really.
Yeah.
And given that, I mean, we're coming up towards our half past mark, where does things like solar panels, do you still use those, Jonathan? Are you still recommending people putting solar panels, water butt collection units, that sort of thing?
Yeah, not the water butts and things like that are good if you've got a garden and you want to do a bit of recycling of water. We did that here, and it was really complex, and to be honest, in the end we thought, do you know what, just minimize the amount of, put in a low water shower that's a really good head, that's got a thing on it that still makes you feel like you're having a shower. It's not coming out, it's sort of an air shower with tiny little drops in it.
I have to share this at this point though. I actually have a color change shower, and it doesn't use energy to make it change color, and when the water comes through, it turns the bathroom different colors. But anyway, there you go. So
you could add those in.
Low water and color change. What more could you want in life?
Beautiful.
Yeah, change your shower head, right? Yeah.
Where did we get to? Solar panels, I think, are still actually worth doing. If you've got the opportunity, there's a bit of money involved, it's an investment, you will get a bit of a return on it over 5 to 7 years, probably pay for itself, depending on whether you've got the right orientation. That solar electric, the PVs that are producing electric, gets more complicated if you're using solar hot water. It's a more complicated system and it needs a bit of maintenance. We don't always recommend you doing that unless you've got a large amount of demand for hot water. So if you're quite a big family or a big group of people sharing a house, that would be worth it. But low water showers and doing that kind of thing can save you a lot of energy as well. And just maybe bathing a little less. Dare I say it? Oh, how long do you spend in the shower?
You're one of those egg timers that can we're back to behaviour again, aren't we? So,
yeah, I'm going to tell you another story about this flat that I lived in, where we had the cling film over the windows. It had a hole in the bathroom wall, and it had an old tin bath, right? And it had an old immersion heater as well. They used to get about 2.5 to 3 inches of water, when you boiled up the water. In winter, you couldn't sit in the bath because it was so cold. If your skin touched the old tin bath and the only about 3 inches of water, it's absolutely freezing. So if I did have a bath, I had to lie in the bath with towels so the rest of my skin wouldn't touch any of the old tin bath. On the plus side, I went swimming every morning. I would never been as fit as when I lived in that flat.
There you go. There's a payoff. Yeah, even cold showers are proven potentially to be beneficial for your health. So, lots of things to experiment with there.
Yeah. So just before we finish then, any other suggestions? Lots of people are saying thank you, some really good tips. Any other suggestions and things we haven't kind of covered that you'd say?
Not really. I think you know I think the big thing that we also need to get to grips with is, and this is Rob's field really, is transport. You know, as well as our home energy use, and I think the way that we live, the way that I live, is very much about how can I make those adjustments in my life so that so it's very parallel with, you know, starting to use a bike more, starting to change those behaviors, which have a huge impact. And transport is one of our biggest impacts on the planet. So going back to the house, it's taking a similar sort of thing, doing things that might actually make you feel healthier. Yeah, it's always good to have a warm, comfortable house, and it's good for your sanity. But I suppose getting into it as being a personal thing, it's a personal quest. You know, I'm up for this. I'm up for this challenge of I want to make an impact. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what to do. There is a lot of information out there on the internet. Wading your way through it can be a bit of a, you know, a minefield, as it always is, but you will come up with some pretty good, you know, you'll get there if you kind of quest at it. And yeah, I think that the behavior change, it's so simple that even, all right, you can eat more salads. I mean, I don't know.
If only it were that simple.
Yeah, it's never that simple, but it is the combination of those changes that you make that kind of get you back to it. But yeah, I mean, we've talked about a few of them, and I think those are the basics. The way that I use my energy that I have coming into my home, how much hot water do I really need to use, without feeling like I'm kind of, oh, you know, I'm like turning into a monk or something, because you know, abstaining from, you know, too much enjoyment.
Joy, in your life. Yeah. Well, we'll share below this post. We'll do a bit more kind of research and share various kind of links, as you say. That there's good resources out there for some of the basic things, and then obviously if people are exploring anything bigger, you know, there's the LEDA are around. Other kind of there's other kind of support out there, isn't there? An architect.
Yeah, there is, and I think I'll try and come up with a few links that we're aware of that also.
That'd be really
help us.
Yeah,
byways, you know, wayfinders.
No, that'd be
brilliant.
Great.
Well, thanks, and thanks, Jonathan, for all the work you do in Leeds and all the buildings that you're making happen and designing and building, and all the things you're retrofitting and everything that you're doing to make things more sustainable.
Yeah, no, well, thank you. And it's great that you're making the effort to get the message out, and also, I'm one of the many-headed group of people who are doing this, which is a good place to be, I think.
No, great, thank you. And then maybe just to round off, I mean, you made the point yourself that there's lots of when we're looking at these themes around sustainability through Leeds, by example, there's lots of things to consider, aren't there, in terms of, you know, our homes and transport and the food we eat and things like that. And then next week we've got another couple of these lunchtime live sessions. We've got one which is looking at it from a slightly different angle. We've got a chat with a couple of people from SAIL, which is an organisation that's working with organisations in the cultural sector in the city, so you know they can manage their kind of environmental impacts.
All right, okay.
And then we've got the second one, which I'm really looking forward to this one actually, where we're looking at the council are asking people to collect tree seeds like conkers and things like that. So that they'll take them in, and then they'll plant plant the seeds to grow trees that we then plant in Leeds. So I think that kind of biodiversity angle to this is really kind of important. So that one's on Monday, I think. So we'll share a link.
We'll be back then. And people saying thank you for your tips, Jonathan, on Facebook as well. So I think that's us for today.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Right, enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Keep wrapped up and keep warm.
Will do.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.